This is June the 2nd, 2025. My name is Kevin Mulqueen. I'm a retired English teacher living in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. And today I'm going to talk about Thomas Hardy's novel, The Return of the Native. Recently I've been posting videos on YouTube about Hardy's novels, and this is the fifth and the final one. It's the end of my little quintet, as it were. The Return of the Native. I haven't read this novel since 2015, but when I last read it I wrote something about it, and this little talk is cobbled together from the notes I made at the time in 2015. Okay, let me begin. I'm reading from a couple of sheets of paper. So this is going back 10 years to 2015. I've just finished The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. This is my second or third time reading it. I bought a battered old second-hand Penguin paperback copy of The Return of the Native in Boar's bookshop in Phnom Penh, one of my favourite second-hand bookshops. If you look at the cover of the book, it's rather misleading because there's a lot of sheep on it. Now actually, in The Return of the Native there are no sheep. I mean, this Egdon Heath place is not conducive to the rearing of sheep, apparently. I mean, this cover it belongs really to Far From the Madding Crowd, which is Thomas Hardy's sheep novel. It's a very good little edition. It's battered, some of the pages are stained. The writing is a little bit too small, but it's okay. Very importantly, it's got notes in the back. I think Hardy's novels are full of cultural references which need explanation, and this has got very, very good notes in the back. Okay, so 10 years ago I finished reading it, and on the whole I was disappointed. I remember reading it for the first time when I was 20-something. Right now I'm 73. 10 years ago I was 63 when I last read it. In my 20s it made a big impression upon me, but I was a bit disappointed this time, especially since I had just finished The Mayor of Casterbridge for the fifth time, which I think is Hardy's second greatest novel, just below Tess. Okay, so The Return of the Native, it's very melodramatic. Now, you can ascribe this to the serial publication. All of Hardy's novels were first published in magazines, and you had to, keep the readers happy. So he used to put in cliffhangers and melodrama. This was published in the Belgravia magazine in 1878. Okay, so he spiced it up by putting in all these bits and pieces which are unrealistic. One character who stands out, he's very memorable but he's rather melodramatic, is Diggory Then, and he makes me smile actually. He's a sort of Wessex cowboy. He goes round troubleshooting, helping people in distress. He's a good cowboy in Wessex. The Return of the Native is mainly famous for the opening chapter. There is this magnificent purple passage about Egdon Heath. It really is beautifully written, but I'm afraid after that the novel goes downhill. So if you just want to read the first chapter and stop, okay. I mean, it's a good novel. It's a very good novel. but it's not as good as Tess, it's not as good as the Mary Casterbridge, it's not as good as Far From the Madding Crowds. Those are my top 3. But the opening chapter, the description of Egdon Heath, is deservedly very famous. When you get to chapter 3, when I got to chapter 3, I felt like stopping reading, because there's an awful lot of silly chatter between the peasants. I did not enjoy chapter 3 at all. The outstanding personality of the novel, it's not the native of the title, is Eustacia Vi, and I would describe her as the Egdon sex bomb. Hardy's descriptions of her are very fine. She reminds me somewhat of Madame Bovary, but she is melodramatic and symbolic, whereas Madame Bovary is realistic and believable. When I compare The Return of the Native with Madame Bovary, which may be the greatest novel ever written, the latter is brilliantly put together, beautifully written. There's no melodrama, whereas The Return of the Native is very patchy. And, you know, you can blame this on the serial publication to some extent. The climax of The Return of the Native is very melodramatic, and it's quite painful to read. So you've got Mrs. Yeobright's rejection and her death, and you've got the deaths in the Weir. Now, going back to Madame Bovary, Madame Bovary's suicide is brilliantly described in minute detail, very realistic, whereas Eustacia's death, which may or may not be by suicide, is not described at all. So it's left to the reader to decide whether Eustacia commits suicide or just falls into the Weir by accident. And to me, that is a serious artistic flaw. Okay, that's the climax of the novel, all those deaths at the Weir. The denouement, the falling away after the climax, is rather bland and forgettable. Again, it contrasts sharply with the absolutely brilliant denouement of Madame Bovary. Hardy, he actually inserts a note at the end to say that he was forced to marry off Diggory Venn because that was what was expected by his readership. Instead of having him disappear mysteriously, he marries him off, and that is just so false. The style of the novel is variable, as always with Hardy. You've got your wonderful sentences and you've got rather pretentious stuff. The most annoying thing about Hardy's writing is his desire to show off. There's far too many literary, biblical, cultural references. I mean, thank God for the notes, they explain them, but these are quite unnecessary, really. Hardy is just showing off his book learning. Sometimes Hardy's sentences are very convoluted. That's another fault, to the point of unintelligibility. You've got to read them several times, and even then it's difficult to understand them. Yeah. Okay, overall, yeah, The Return of the Native, it's a memorable read. I think you should read it, but it's definitely inferior to Hardy's best novels, Tess the Mare and Far From the Madding Crowd. The Woodlanders and Return of the Native vie for 4th position. They're numbers 4 and 5 in the Hardy canon. Okay, that was short and sweet, wasn't it? Yeah, well, I hope you read it in spite of my criticisms, and I hope you enjoyed this little video.